Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about the analysis of home equity loan for Chase Manhattan. First, let us to take a look of the contents that we're going to go through tonight. And firstly will be the context, which is the background of the company and what we're going to do. And which is the second will be the friend questions. And then third will be vision. And fourth will be the argument. And the last but not the least will be our conclusions. And then we're going to go through the context. First is the company. The company that we choose is Chase Manhattan Bank. As you all know that the banking industry is one of the leaders in applying business analytics as part of their operation. In this scenario, a bank would like to use their customer information to assist them in determining whether or not they should approve a home equity loan. The data available is from 5,960 customers in the file. And then the second, which is who we're gonna working for, which is after the analyze who we're gonna be specifically delivering the result to, and the manager. First is the manager of the loan department, and then the operation committee members, including CEO Jamie Dillon and CFO Marion Leake and CMO Christine Lemko. And the third will be the lead. Um, The Chase Manhattan Bank recently experienced some defaults of their home equity loan. They want to develop the model to determine whether or not they should approve a home equity loan or not. In order to do that, some of the specific information that are needed. We need to know more about our default customers, such as who they are, what their job, and what are their credit rating, and why did they leave the bank. It is vital for us to have a deep understanding of these customers. We also need to know which factor or factors cause the customer default. With a better model to analyze these factors, the Chase Manhattan Bank can predict customers' default by avoiding proving highly potential future default and run good CRM, therefore increase the profit. Talk about the visions of the Chase Manhattan. The sample size of the data from the analyze is 5,960, which means we have adequate amount of customers to research. Their features were divided into 16 different parts, and we can conclude the common features of default customers by linear regression. And then we're going to use the multivariate analyze to acquire the relationship between these factors. Use data filters, um, and then use the data filter and the ANOVA to test which variables would affect the loyalty of customers. We have listed out three framed questions. The first one, which is what are the common characteristics of our default customers and what are the reasons causing them to quit from our bank? And the second one, which is what are the variables in our database when we compare them will make significant influence to increase the default rate? And what are the relations between those variables? And the third, which is how should we use the predictor model to check who will be more likely to default in order to reduce our losses. And we just like build a model to predict. The first argument, which is actually based on our first frame question, what are the common characteristics of our default customers and what are the reasons causing them to quit from our bank? So basically, we just want to know the reasons of home equity loan default. So there are 16 variables from each of our 5,960 customer sample. And in this case, we're going to use in the linear regression. And the variable default is chosen as dependent variable, and the other variables are independent variables. And this result is acquired by the fit model function in JUMP. You can see on the left graph, this is the result after we did the fit model function in JUMP, and then this is the result. And As you can see in the parameter estimate, there are 9 variables, which is the p-value is actually smaller than the 0.05, which means showing that they all have comparatively high influences on the default. A customer who owns one or more of these features, or he or she is more likely to default. However, the p-value of intercept is also less than 0.05, which means there exist some other factors that are not considered. The second argument, which is based on our second frame questions. First, for the step 1, we want to use the multivariable analyze to see the correlations between those significant variables, which is the variables that we use in the linear regression in the jump by the feed models to figure out those variables which is related to our default rate. We found out the correlation between each of these variables are very low, and which means that these variables are not dependent to each other, so a default may appear as long as the customer owns one of these features, which means as long as the customer owns one of these features or the variables, he might have a high possibility that he will be default. And then step 2, we will be using the feed model to test which variables are most effective ones to cause the default. So for the graph 1, we used the multivariate correlations. We want to see that whether these variables are related to each other, or which means could one of the variable cause another one. And then the result, as you can see, the R square is relatively low with each other, so then which means that none of these variables are related to each other. And then the graph 2, which is we used the feed models to test which variables are most effective ones to cause default. As you can see on the effect summary, we have like a delinquency and DBT link, derogatories, and also the clergy, and also job has slightly crossed the line. After we figured out which of these variables are most effectively affect the default rate, and we want to use a regression formula to check whether the relationship between default and the variables are positive or negative. After saving formula column, the significant variables are separated, and the result we get out positive related variables are job office, clergy, and CLNO. And then the negatively related variables are job, sales, and derogatories and delinquencies, and inquiry, and debated link. The graph 1, which is a formula of link 0, which is acquired by linear regressions, and the second one is a formula of problem 1. This formula's result is default 1, which means that the customers quit home equity loan since default 1 is positively related to link 0. The relationship between variables and default remains the same as that between variables and link 0. So variables positively related to default are job, office, clergy, and link 0, and variables negatively related to default are job, sales, derogatories, delinquencies, inquiries, and deep links. For the argument 3, which is based on the frame questions 3, we have 2 steps. First step is in order to increase the accuracy of predictor model, we deduct the amount of variables to 6, which are the most significant. And Step 2, the predictive formula of default is saved by using fixed linear regression, and we create a new column called arrow to testify the accuracy of our predictive model. For the graph 1, which is effective summary of fixed linear regressions, for the graph 2, we created the column called arrow in order to check the accuracy of the predicted model. The formula of arrow is listed as most likely default minus default. 3, accuracy of the predicted model is 2.35%, and the result of 0 means correct, and the result of 1 means error. Use tabulate to see the accuracy percentage of the model. Accuracy is pretty high, but still exists space to improve. Conclusion part, we have the common variables of customers who are most likely to default the loans are number of delinquent credit lines, debit to income ratio, number of major derogatory reports, age of oldest credit line in months, job of sales and job of office, number of recent credit line inquiries, and there exist some other significant factors that has influences on home equity loan default. So Chase Manhattan Bank should add more factors into investigation in order to raise the accuracy of the predictor model. In this case, the bank may want to know some demographic features such as customers' education, annual household income range, marriage and number of children, criminal record, and former loan record are also good considerations. The end, and thanks for listening.